Matt Randall Productions, and in a previous video we talked about some of the ways you could get an in-ear monitor solution working for you and your band on a budget. And one of the key reasons we looked at why you might want to use in-ear monitors in your band was for getting things like a click track running. So in this video we're going to discuss my three options, my three best solutions for getting a click track running for you and your band. So stick around. Alright, great. So we've got our in-ear monitor solution working. Now we can implement things like click tracks. But just what generates that click? Where does the click come from? If you're still not following us when we talk about a click track, we're talking about a metronome. We're talking about something that sounds like this. So where does it come from? What generates it? Well, we're going to talk about three options today where you can generate a click from, ranging from very basic, very inexpensive, using gear you've probably already got, up to some more complex solutions, much more complex, much more expensive, but the flexibility that comes with it is also increased. Before we get into that detail though, we need to cover some prerequisites. The first prerequisite you're going to need is a mixing console or a PA. Wherever you set up, you're going to need to have some way of sending a signal into a central source that can be distributed. Where's it going to be distributed? Well, that's your second prerequisite. You're going to need your in-ear monitor solution. Hopefully, you've come this far, you've already got that sorted. And the third thing you're going to need is patience. You're going to need patience. The band's going to need patience. Everyone involved in this is going to need patience because it's going to take time to get used to. Now that you've got all those three sorted, let's get into the details. The first solution I want to present, you've already got one, probably a smartphone. An iPhone, an Android phone, doesn't matter. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of Metronome apps out there on the App Store and Google's Play Store. There are tons of them out there. Lots of them are free as well. What I want to recommend for you today is an app called Metronome Tempo. Now, I also recommend you spring the $3 or $4, I think it is, for the advanced version. The advanced version lets you save them as presets, so you can recall them. You can, hopefully, you've already preset your tempos before you go into practices, before you go into your sets. This allows you to pre-record them, to preset them, and then just scroll through them. Some of the free ones, they won't let you save them, so you'll have to tap each song in. As you move from song to song to song, you'll have to go back and preset them all. So Tempo allows you to preset them, recall them. It's also got virtually any possibility of time division you could think of. 4/4, 3/4, 6/8, 4/5, 4/6, 4/7, whatever you can come up with, it can handle it. Now most of the free ones are going to support 4/4, 3/4, and 6/8, so you're not going to have a problem there. But if you do come across something obscure, the free ones may not cut it. Now to get the audio out of the phone and into your PA system where it can be distributed to your in-ear system, you're going to need an 1/8 inch cable. I was scrounging the desk looking for one before this, but at the time of recording I couldn't find one. I'll cut to a scene of it here so you can see what I'm talking about. You're going to need an 1/8 inch cable out to something like an XLR or an RCA lead. And that's going to need to go into a DI box so it can connect into your mixing console. From there, your mixing engineer, your sound engineer can distribute it to your in-ear solution. Now for me, in my setup, our PA system is digital and can be controlled from a smartphone. So what that meant was I wasn't able to dedicate my smartphone to be used to control a metronome because I was using the smartphone to control what's in my ears. I could control the different various levels of monitor sends that come into my ears. And that's the same for the rest of the band. They couldn't dedicate their phones to that either because they were using them to control what's in their ears. So this is where option 2 comes in. And option 2 is to use a dedicated piece of hardware, a metronome box, something like a drum computer, a drum machine. Now the one that comes to mind right off the top of my head is the Tama Rhythm Watch. This is a very common piece of equipment that usually will sit next to the drummer, and he can tap the tempos in, he can load them, he can set them in any time signature variation that he wants. Now there's no downside to this other than really the fact that it's a separate piece of equipment that you've got to go out to buy. If money is a problem, you could also think about something like the Boss DB60. Boss make other inexpensive metronome pieces of hardware as well. Now I've experimented with the DB60, we tried that for a couple of weeks, but for me, and this might have just been the one I got, it would speed up and slow down. That's not what you want out of a metronome. The whole point of the metronome is to be rock solid, rock steady. You can't have your metronome speeding up and slowing down. Now I don't know if it was because the DB60 is a tiny piece of hardware, and I set it right next to the drummer. I don't know if the vibrations from the drums made it go off, but either way, that didn't work at all. If you are going to use something like a rhythm watch or a dedicated piece of metronome hardware, then it's the same story. They're probably going to have an 1/8 inch out on them, and you're going to want to run that into a DI box into your mixing console. So this leads us into option 3, which is the option that I still run with today, and that is to use a dedicated piece of software on a laptop. It can be a Mac or a PC, and an audio interface. Now in terms of software, we're talking about DAWs or DAWs, digital audio workstations. Now a couple come to mind that are really prominent in worship. On a Mac, it might be MainStage. On a PC or a Mac, it might be Ableton Live. Now Ableton Live is what I landed on, so that's what we're going to go into. So with this third option, with this software option of using Ableton Live, it's more expensive. First of all, we have to buy the software. You require more hardware. You need a computer, you need a laptop to run it on. You need an audio interface, although there are ways around that as well. And you need a lot more time and patience to get it set up and working. Once it's up and running, it's very simple, it's very straightforward, but it does require some initial effort. Now Ableton Live comes in actually four variations. There's Live Intro, Live Standard, Live Suite, and then there's a very basic version called Live Lite. Quite often, Ableton Live Lite comes pre-bundled with a number of different audio interfaces, so you may already have it. For the purposes of our demonstration, we'll be using Ableton Live Intro. Now the only real difference between Intro and Standard and Suite is the number of inputs and outputs that we can use and the number of virtual software instruments that's inside them. We're not using any of that. We only need 1 or 2 outputs, and Intro has all that we need for that. Intro costs $99 US. The full professional, the full suite version is I think it's $800 US. So there's a massive gap. There are significantly more features in it, but for our purposes, we don't need them. So we're going to jump into the computer and I'll show you how I set up Ableton Live Intro for use in a standard worship set. Okay, so this is Ableton Live 9. This is what it looks like when we open it up. A couple of things I want you to take note of. First of all, this is how a standard DAW looks like. We work left to right, right? Here's one track, here's another track, here's a third track. That's probably what you're used to if you've seen a DAW before. Ableton Live has this mode here, which is called Session Mode. Now it's very unique, it's very different to a standard DAW. It doesn't work left to right. It has tracks that go up and down like this. Track 1, track 2, track 3, track 4. What we're going to use this for is to create a song on the first track, another song on a second track, a third song, and a fourth song. Okay? The other thing I want to take note of over here is this area. Now this is the metronome section. This little button turns it on and off. You can't hear anything right now. It's not actually running. Here's the tempo. You do have the ability to tap the tempo in. You can type it in. You can change the time signature to 3/4 if you want, or whatever. Turn it on. And that's what it sounds like. So what I do with this is I first predetermine the tempo of each song. So if I've got a set list that consists of 4 songs, I determine the time signature. Usually they're all in 4/4, but there'll be the odd 3/4, maybe the odd 6th, 8th song. And then I work out the BPM and I preload them. So let's say day 1, we're going to start our set list with a song called Everlasting God. So in here, I'm going to rename this to be Everlasting got, I'm just going to expand this out so we can see it. Over here, there are 4 tracks. There are 2 MIDI tracks and there are 2 audio tracks for this song. Over here we also have reverb and delay, but we're not using any of that at the moment. This is an effects bus. In fact, we might get rid of the effects bus. I never use the effects bus in any of the stuff I do in Ableton. Now all this has done at the moment is I've named a song, Everlasting God. What I also then will do is at the end of this song I will put a semicolon in and type the BPM. Now Everlasting God I know is at 110 BPM, so I type 110 BPM in, put another colon in, and I put the time signature in. Now when I hit play, it does nothing. First of all, you see the click is not actually turned on. Second of all, when I hit play, there's nothing in any of these tracks. So there's nothing for this song to play. So what you simply have to do is double click. There we go. And now it's created a blank MIDI section down here. So basically it will do nothing in a loop, but now when I click it, now when I click play, it has something to do. Now you'll note also it's changed the tempo from 120, what it was previously, to 110. That's because I preset it over here to 110. Sorted. Then for our next song, let's say we might want to do a song called Beautiful Savior. So we'll rename this. And Beautiful Savior is 155 BPM. But it's also in 3/4 timing. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Not 1, 2, 3, 4, like the previous song was. Now again, if I hit play on it, if I hit play on this, it's not going to do anything because there's nothing, we haven't given it anything to do. So if we double click the stop button, not the stop, double click in that MIDI blank space, it creates an empty blank for us. Then we click play. There we go, 155 BPM at 3/4. We can kill that. Let's create a third song. How Great Is Our God, an all-time classic. How Great Is Our God is much slower, 78 BPM. But it's at 4/4. Again, I hit play, it does nothing. I can put this MIDI anywhere I like, by the way. It doesn't really matter which one I put it in. Now I've got it at 78 BPM. And let's do a last one. Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace is somewhere around that same BPM, 78. Oops, spelled that wrong. And there we go. So now I can shuffle through all of them. I can play the first song. And you'll note this last tab here, 1 bar, which means how long will it wait before it moves on. So it's going to 1 bar. I can hit play on the next one, but it waits 1 bar before it moves on. So there'll always be a smooth transition between songs when you use something like Ableton. Now to make this simple, when you're running this live, it's really hard to use your laptop and trackpad and find these buttons and click on them. So Ableton Live has a really awesome feature where you can control it through key presses. So to do that, I come up here and I click on this key button. Then I can select anything I want. So I'm going to select this play button. And now it's just highlighted. It's not doing anything. And I might select the number 1 by pushing the number 1 key. And you'll see a number 1 shows up over here. Now by pushing the number 1, I trigger that song. I trigger that track set. Spacebar is always stop in Ableton. Let's go through and trigger the rest with 2, 3, and 4. Now I can control each song by pressing 1, 2, 3, 4. That's very, very handy when you're working live. So that is how to get a basic click running in Ableton. I've shown you one feature out of this entire software suite. And I do use it for a lot more than that, but we'll save that for another video. For now, the only things left to explain, how do we get the audio out of the laptop? Well, we use either something like this. This is an old Line 6 audio interface, which is USB. So USB into the laptop, and then we run the outputs out of this into the mixing console. Alternatively, if you've got the right DI box, if you've got something like a radio DI, the AV version, the AV2 I think it is, you can run an 1/8 inch out of the headphone jack out of this into a DI box into your console. If you want to use more, if you want to get into the advanced stuff, which we won't get into the detail of, but if you did want to get into things like using backing tracks, you're going to need to use an audio interface that lets you split them out. So you can have the click running to one channel, you could have a backing track running to another channel, you could have different bits running to different outputs, so your audio engineer could control all that stuff. So that's it for how we're going to get a click running. If you've got any questions about what we've talked about here today, please leave them below. This stuff did not click for me. This didn't click for me immediately as well. It took me a long time to get this stuff working. And it took us even longer to be able to use this regularly, consistently in our worship band setting. So don't lose heart, be patient with it. Drop me some questions, I'm more than glad to help, and we'll see you in another video.